Okay, I've got 11 a.m. My name is Ron Gacious. I'm chairman of the City of Lawrence Advisory, Affordable Housing Advisory Board. And it's my pleasure to call our December meeting to order at this time. We've got a lot of work ahead of us today. I think, depending on what kind of questions we have for our applicants, we could run perhaps longer than 2 hours. It'll be my plan to roughly every hour find a break between presentations and give us all a short break. We'll try to proceed in an orderly manner and get everybody heard and questions answered and get on our way. First order of business is to approve, I need to take roll as first order of business and confirm that we have a quorum. So when I call your name, please wave a hand, take yourself off mute, let us know that you're here. And I'll start with Cole Brown. Cole, are you here today? I am looking. Brad, have you seen Cole? Do we have anyone downtown? Porter, do we have anyone downtown with you?
Mr. Chair, Diane Stoddard, Assistant City Manager. He is not here in the commission room. There's
okay, I do not see Cole. Rebecca Buford?
Here.
There's Rebecca. Christina Gentry?
Here, hello.
Let's see, we've got some names down here. I do not see Christina, did not see Cole.
Oh no, are you able to hear me?
I can hear you, Christina, yes.
Okay,
I see people nodding heads up and down. Edith is here. There's Christina. Christina, thank you, I see you. Thomas Howe?
Present. Present.
I see Thomas.
Ron, can you not hear us?
Patrick Kelly, I thought I saw Patrick. There's Patrick. Paul Newsom.
Ron, did you see that I am here?
Dana Ortiz. Dana, here. I see Dana smiling at me. Shannon Oury. Yes, ma'am. Monty Sokup.
Here.
Right there, thank you. Sarah Waters.
I'm here.
Thank you, Sarah. Erica Zimmerman.
Here.
Thank you, Erica. And Ron Gacious, myself, I'm present. Let's go back. Was Cole Brown with us today? Diane, do we have anyone, is Cole anywhere downtown with you guys?
Mr. Chair, Diane Stoddard, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me, Ron? I think Ron may be having some problems with his audio.
Don't think we have Cole. Everyone else is present. We've got 12 members in attendance.
Could I suggest that if somebody has Ron's cell number,
Diane, do we have any public comment folks for our public comment period? I can't hear you, Diane.
This is Diane Stoddard for everybody else. It appears that Ron's having some problem with his audio. So if you hold on just a moment.
I can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, you can hear? Okay, thank you. Okay, great. Mr. Chair, Diane Stoddard, Assistant City Manager. No, Cole is not here in the room and there is no one else here in the room present.
Very good. Thank you, Diane.
And just as a reminder, we do have some at the top notes about Zoom and the meeting call. If Danny can read those at the appropriate time, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
When would you like that done on the agenda?
Diane Stoddard, Assistant City Manager, just right at the top of the meeting, if we could hear, Mr. Chair.
Can we do that now?
Yes, Danny, would you mind doing that?
Absolutely. This is Danny Walters with Planning and Development Services. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to provide a few procedural reminders for the virtual meeting. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel. Like was mentioned a little bit earlier, we are having a few technical challenges. So it's my understanding that we're not on channel 25 today, but we are on the YouTube channel. During the meeting, when you're not participating, please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon found in the lower left-hand side of the Zoom menu next to the video icon. When you are muted, a red line will appear over the icon. Muting your microphone during the meeting will make it easier for everyone to hear. You'll just have to remember to unmute if and when you want to speak. In some cases, the host of the meeting may mute or unmute people as needed to minimize distractions during the meeting. Please remember to state your name every time you speak for the benefit of those listening remotely. You can turn your video camera on or off by clicking the video icon in the menu. For the purposes of this meeting, when you are participating in the meeting, please keep your video on. When you are not participating in the meeting, it is okay to turn your video off. You will still be able to listen to the meeting when your video is off. You'll just have to remember to turn your video back on when you're ready to participate. Turning your video off when you are not participating will help make sure that the active meeting participants can be seen on the screen. In some cases, the host may turn someone's video off if they are not actively participating just to avoid distraction during the meeting. You can always turn your video back on during the meeting. If you are participating by phone, you can click *6 to unmute your phone. For those using Zoom, somewhere on the screen, you will see a choice to toggle between speaker and gallery view. Speaker view will show the active speaker and gallery view tiles all of the meeting participants. Board members and city staff members, you must state your name and title each time you speak. All motions will need to be stated clearly. After a motion is made and seconded, the chair will call on board members individually to provide their vote. Mr. Chair, you will then need to announce whether the motion carried and the count of the vote. When public comment is sought on an item, individuals participating via Zoom should use the raise your hand feature. Windows and Mac users can access this feature through the participants button at the bottom of their screen. Android and iPhone users can use this feature through the More button located at the bottom right-hand corner of their screen. For those calling in by phone, you may dial *9. Individuals will be called upon by name and in the order they appear on the meeting host screen. When you are called on, please unmute your listening device and state your name before speaking. The chair will then call for in-person public comment for those without access to technology options. Staff present will direct you to the podium to speak, follow social distancing and safety protocols. The regular 3-minute time limit will apply. Thank you. Mr. Chair, you're on mute.
Ron Gaish is chair, and Danny, we don't have anybody for a public comment at this time. Is that correct?
Diane Stoddard, Assistant City Manager, correct, Mr. Chair. There's no one here anyway in the chambers. There could be some people who have signed up to comment on any number of your agenda items.
Okay, very good.
If so, I will let you know once I see somebody's raised their hand.
Do we have any other administrative work that needs to be dealt with at this time, Diane?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Brad Carr, Community Development. I know there are some people that signed up specifically to give just general public comment. So I think we need to poll maybe just one more time to make sure that people are understanding that we're asking right now for just general public comment.
Yes, thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Diane Stoddard, Assistant City Manager. I do see that Mr. Ozark has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you all. Steve Ozark, active concerned citizen and big supporter of AHAB. You know, it's been really humbling this last month to listen to the discussions with our community leaders who are meeting the monumental and heroic efforts that are necessary in this pandemic to do housing, to rapid rehouse. I mean, Dana shared with me the 140 landlords that she's worked with to keep people in their housing to avoid eviction. Matthew Falk shared with me the upcoming challenge of some 400 people to rapid rehouse in the new year with only 4 staff members. Renee Poole at the Lawrence Community Shelter shared with me that they are undertaking the very important gap that we have now of 100 or so or more people that don't have shelter now that are outside in this freezing weather. And I'm so very thankful to everyone, including city staff, Danielle, and all you guys that have, Brad, you guys have gone beyond your job to try to make this good for our most vulnerable people. But I have to just say in my heart that this body, this fund, this trust fund, to me proved its need and its worth when in March and April, there was money offered by the city and the county that could not be used at that time because we did not have properties. We did not have affordable housing or anyone coming forward from the public sector, not blaming, just stating a fact that I stand, as I have so many times, stronger than ever, that while we have an overwhelming need, not just today, but in the months coming when evictions are allowed and all these people, what's going to happen? I hear the fear and concern in our leaders, and I want to echo the depth that we've reached due to the pandemic. It's pointed out our society's shortcomings. But I really firmly, more than ever, ask that we ask our community, ask our leaders, and ask our budgets to say, what do we need
Thank
for
you,
people
Steve.
to survive, and what do we need to have affordable housing? Thank you.
Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. Thank you, Stephen. Just to make sure, do we have anyone else out there wanting to make general public comments at this time? Anyone?
Mr. Chair, Diane Stoddard, I don't see anyone with their hand raised anyway at this time.
Thank you. Next order of business is to approve minutes of the November 9th meeting. The chair would entertain a motion to approve.
Rebecca Buford, tenants to homeowners, I approve, or a motion to approve is what I meant to say.
Thank you, Rebecca. Do we have a second?
Thomas Howell, Lawrence Board of Realtors, I'll second that.
Thank you, Thomas. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of November 9th, 2020. All in favor, please respond aye when we do our roll call vote. Rebecca Buford.
Aye.
Christina Gentry.
Aye.
Edith Guffey.
Aye.
Thomas Howe.
Aye.
Patrick Kelly.
Aye.
Paul Newsom.
Aye.
Dana Ortiz.
Aye.
Shannon Oury.
Aye.
Monty Sokup.
Aye.
Sarah Waters.
Aye.
And Erica Zimmerman.
Aye.
Ron Gacious, chair, also votes aye. The motion to approve the minutes is approved on a 12-0 vote. Next item of business is to receive a monthly financial report.
Good morning, Chair, and the rest of the board. My name is Danielle Bushcutter, Budget and Strategic Initiatives Administrator. I wanted to give you a brief update. I know you have a long agenda ahead of you regarding the financials for this particular fund. Last month, we did receive about $78,000 in sales tax proceeds. This does mean that we now think we will be on track to reach our budget estimates. That is predominantly due to the fact that our interest is much higher than we initially anticipated, but that is good news overall that we do believe that we're going to hit those revenue estimates. No change on the expenditure side. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all may have, but that is a very brief update on the financials for the Affordable Housing Sales Tax Fund.
Danielle, I have Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. I have one question. Do you have what's the current forecast for what the trust fund will generate in the first 6 months of 2021? Do you happen to have that number?
This is Danielle Bushcutter. I can certainly go and pull that number. I don't have the first 6-month estimate directly in front of me. I will say that the sales tax has been, although still volatile, we're coming in relatively close to the budgeted estimate. We believe will come in relatively close. So we think we're still on track, obviously something that we will continue to monitor incredibly closely and provide updates to you all. But I don't have that exact figure right at my disposal, but we could certainly get it to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Any questions for Danielle? Any comments from the board? Seeing none, thank you very much. We've got 2 items under quick updates on our agenda. First is sources of income research memo. Diane, who should we turn to for review of the memo?
Yes, hi, Mr. Chair. I can do that real quickly. So this was a question that, this is Diane Stoddard, a question that had come up in your retreat, and Maria Garcia, Assistant City Attorney, has prepared a memo for you. And there were a couple of questions that were posed to her, which are addressed in this memo. One, whether source of income ordinance could be legal in Kansas, given some of the prohibition in state law on rent controls. And the short answer is that the law doesn't preempt such an ordinance, but such an ordinance would have to be very carefully crafted. And then the second question had to do with whether the city could consider an ordinance mandating that any landlord be required to accept Section 8 vouchers. And to that question, the answer was that she believes the ordinance requiring the acceptance of a voucher would likely be in violation of state statute. So we wanted to get this memo to you, but if there is interest in the board in further discussion on this, we could certainly have it at a time when Ms. Garcia could be present to be able to answer any questions that you all have. But again, wanted to get that to you here quickly as possible.
Yes, Dana.
Thank you, Ron. Dana Ortiz, Family Promise of Lawrence. Diane, I'd like to ask a question. Are any other cities in the state of Kansas utilizing either of these? I know of cities around the country that are affiliated with Family Promise National that have requirements for vouchers for landlords, but I would love to find out if there's any other cities in Kansas that have that kind of, and therefore then how are they doing it if the case is that they are requiring landlords to accept vouchers?
Yes, I would note that this is Diane Stoddard, Assistant City Manager, that in the memo, Ms. Garcia indicates that that staff was unable to find an example in Kansas of an ordinance that had the prohibitory language about source of income. She does cite that there was an example in Kansas City, Missouri, where they recently adopted that language, but of course that would be a different state and different state laws. So, so based on the research that she has done, she did not appear to be aware of that, and I don't have any further information.
Okay, thank you very much, Diane.
Ron
This is
Davis.
Christina Gentry. Oh, I'm sorry, Ron.
No,
Do you
go right
mind?
ahead. No, I
Thanks.
was going to ask for other comments. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I have some comments. So I did some research. I just Googled lots of stuff, and I'm just going to read out what I wrote about this because I just kind of wanted to make sure I got all of those notes out and all of my thoughts out on this. So the Fair Housing Act makes it illegal to make housing decisions based on 7 protected classes. Those 7 are race, color, sex, national origin, religion, handicap, and familial status. While federal law sets minimum protections, states and localities can add additional protected classes. To me, COVID And I'm sure for all, in some form, COVID has exacerbated much already existing inequities. But I feel one positive may be that government aid in the form of rental assistance vouchers, such as Section 8, are presenting themselves as a saving grace for renters and homeowners with a guarantee of payments made monthly for Section 8 recipients. There hasn't been that kind of security offered by those not receiving housing assistance during a pandemic where unemployment is at record. So perhaps this is, excuse me, this is maybe, we can make some argument into persuasive acceptance of vouchers and help reduce negative stigma attached to Section 8 voucher recipients. And maybe we could talk about how we can make income, or I'm sorry, sources of income a protected class in this space. So that's all I wanted to share.
And if I might, Thomas Howell, Lawrence Board of Realtors, if I might amend just briefly to that. Christina, in Lawrence, we have 8 protected classes because our city commission years ago was foresighted enough to have sexual orientation also as a protected class. So we have 8 protected classes here in the city.
Thank you, Christina Gentry, citizen at large. Thank you for making that addition. I guess I Googled something that didn't capture that information. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Other comments from board members? Well, I've been intrigued by this issue, and I was looking forward to reading staff memo on this issue. And honestly, it came out about the way I thought it would. Source of income discrimination strikes me as being an excellent example of just the insidious ways that discriminatory actions get embedded in our institutions and in our cultural, our way of doing business. And it's tough to stamp out. It reflects ignorance, I think, and it probably reflects some negative biases that people hold that the rest of the community doesn't share. And I'd love for us to be able to step up and do something about it. But it strikes me that any initiative that we would try to put into a city ordinance would very likely be challenged. And my thought is, on the ground, we probably wouldn't change very much very quickly. We would create perhaps a lightning rod that would polarize some of our landlords. I really liked something that you said, Christina, which was making reference to using this opportunity to speak about the virtues of a voucher and the steady income that a landlord can expect from a voucher holder that's in their space. And I'd like to see the advisory board or city staff, or I'd like to see more consideration of this issue and discussion of this issue. But I'd like us to first take strategic approaches with landlords other than just trying to create another protected class and see how that gets litigated. The state has a pretty consistent record of jumping in front of the city of Lawrence when we've tried to be the first amongst communities in our state to initiate this kind of regulatory approach. And I'm still looking for ways to engage the private sector, including our our landlords across the community. And I'd like to see us engage them in some other ways rather than drafting of an ordinance and going after them with a mandate of some sort. Does that generate any additional discussion? Thank you.
Ron, this is Monty, Soak Up Justice Matters. You know, I know we have a big agenda today. I'm wondering if we should put this on as a discussion topic for a future meeting or even workshop. I think there's merit in this idea. I don't disagree that we're going to meet some resistance. But I feel like, you know, our charge is to charge forward on these kinds of things and let the city commission decide whether they have the political will to forward something. But the committee needs to discuss that. That's certainly not my decision. So I just suggest that we push it forward to a new meeting where we have can devote appropriate time to it.
Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. Monty, that's a great idea. Chair will take this item, defer it to future consideration, and we'll continue the discussion at a later time. Thank you.
Monty, Soak Up Justice Matters. I think that also gives us other people that maybe this wasn't on their radar a chance to do some more research independently and look at the topic and have a better discussion. So thanks.
Excellent comment. Thank you. Next up is the unequal impact of COVID on Douglas County. Diane, are you leading us through this discussion or someone else?
Diane Stoddard, Assistant City Manager. Mr. Chair, this is just some general information. I know that this had been a topic of discussion amongst the board, and this is some presentation materials on an unequal impact that we thought may be of interest to you.
Very good. Any comments or questions from advisory board members regarding the COVID impact presentation? Seeing none, we'll continue on to our next agenda item. That's our
Ron.
Yes, I'm sorry, Dana, please go right ahead.
Dana Ortiz, Family Promise of Lawrence. Many of us have seen this presentation in other formats. So if you haven't spent time looking at it, it's remarkable. And there's a great deal of research that went into this, that with data that is really critical to maybe helping us define some actions we might take in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you. I found it very helpful and informative. We'll now begin then our applicant presentations. And Diane, are you going to lead, someone's going to lead us through our project elements chart that's been updated?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I think to begin, Danny Walters is going to make a few comments for the board related to the overall process as a reminder of how this board will process these applications, both related to this meeting and your next scheduled meeting, and kind of what will be the steps in between. And then just some other helpful background information about some funding issues in the community that may be of good background for the board as you have these deliberations.
Thank you. Danny?
Yes, this is Danny Walters with Planning and Development Services. I'm just going to share my screen with the timeline for your process, just to kind of remind everybody what we're looking at. If you all can see my screen here. Just kind of a reminder where we're at here is the applicant presentations to AHAB, so December 14th. You can see kind of what the process looks like from here on. The next meeting that you guys have, so today you will hear presentations from the applicants, and then we will get the scores from you for the individual applications. And then you'll have your funding discussions in depth on January 11th. Just wanted to kind of let everyone know that you've probably seen several different information pieces about other funding that's happening right now, and some of the projects might seem a little bit familiar. So just wanted to kind of show you where the ESG, the Emergency Solutions Grant, CARES Act application process kind of comes in, and it's sort of right in the middle of what you guys are doing here. So just thought it would be a little bit helpful to list out here that is going on too. And we do have some additional projects that are being looked at for the ESG CV. So, you know, not sure if you guys want any additional information on that. Just kind of wanted to let you guys know that is out there too. So the funding recommendation discussion will happen at your meeting on the 11th, and then it will go, assuming that the discussion is finished and you guys have recommendation, it will go to the City Commission in February at their meeting on the 2nd. So if anyone has any questions about the timeline, I'm happy to answer them.
This is Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. I have a question. No, never mind. Yeah. The question is of these ESG funds,
Mm-hmm.
and so where it says total, what you're telling me is that's the number that's been confirmed.
This is Danny Walters. No, that is the application amount. So these dollar amounts have not been confirmed as of this point.
Okay.
So this is just the applications that are going to the state on the 15th.
Going to the state for CARES Act funding. I thought that had to be spent by December 31st.
This is Danny Walters. This is a different pot of CARES Act money. The CARES Act money that had to be spent by the end of the month came from the county. This specifically is from the Emergency Solutions Grant. And if I'm not mistaken, has to be spent by December of 2022, I think. So the actual timeline for the application that's due tomorrow is the grant term of January 1st through December 31st. So theoretically, before you have your discussion on the funding, we should be able to provide additional information for you on that. So.
Very good, thank you. That will be helpful. Are there questions for Danny? Diane, do we need to review the notice of funding availability documents or the funding matrix, or can we go, or
Mr. Chair, Diane Stoddard, Assistant City Manager. Those were just kind of for your background information, just to understand the context. And I believe as we go into these presentations, we have asked for each of the applicants to be prepared to provide a 5-minute presentation for this board that overviews their application for you. And then the board can ask questions of the applicant representative at the appropriate time. And we also might want to ask before we begin whether any of the members have conflicts on this item so that they can then announce that to the board and not participate in the proceedings. And I'll ask Danny and Brad to jump in case I've forgotten anything else that we should advise.
Thank you, Diane. Well, looking at the applicants, I know we'll have several conflicts, so we'll let people identify themselves. Our next order of business is going to be to begin applicant presentations, beginning with Lawrence Habitat for Humanity, and take the list as it's been published in our agenda. Are there board members that'd like to identify conflicts? I see several, Rebecca and Dana and Erica and Shannon. Those are the 4 I see. Yes, Shannon, Erica. Any others? Very good, thank you. Ladies, I'm sorry, but we'll have to ask you to not participate. And next up then, we have Lawrence Habitat for Humanity. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Patrick Kelly. I just want to confirm with staff that there's not a conflict on transitions. That's a tricky one because money to support it comes from the Douglas County Commission. Diane, do you have a thought on that?
Diane Stoddard, Assistant City Manager. Sometimes these do come at us in different angles, Commissioner. And so I would say that in these kind of cases where there's not a very clear direct conflict, if a member did feel that they had a conflict, they could also recuse themselves from the process. I do need to pause because I haven't been keeping track of the count, whether we would have a quorum if an additional board member did not deliberate with this. And so I maybe would ask Brad or Danny to help me with that issue, just as background for you as you decide if you want to declare any conflict with it.
This is Brad Carr, Community Development Analyst. By my count, if Patrick Kelly recuses himself, we would still have 7 board members available to vote, which would meet our quorum.
Okay, so I think it is sort of a weird situation here. I am going to recuse myself just so that there's no feeling that there is anything. I don't want to give the impression that there's a conflict here.
Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. Thank you, Patrick. I think these are difficult decisions. You know, we've just lost 5 of the most knowledgeable people about housing issues from our advisory board as a result of our conflicts rules. And I understand the conflicts rules. And I support what the conflicts rules are trying to do. And then I look at how we're going to miss some, what I think is very well-informed input on the issues by taking out all of our applicants. I'm looking for a solution to that. And if anyone's got a great idea sometime, let's talk about it. So we'll move on from there. We have, thank you, Patrick. We have remaining 7 members of our board, and please no one leave. Thank you very much. Next up is Habitat for Humanity.
Good morning. I'm Stacy Schroeder, Development Manager for Lawrence Habitat for Humanity. And I'm going to share my screen really here quick, or not. Okay. So just moving forward, our request for funding was to complete 5 critical repairs for homeowners here in our community who meet the income guidelines, and also to complete 1 unit workforce housing, a permanent affordable house for here in our community. With that, we know that we have a need for affordable housing, and building a house takes time and funding. So moving towards using funding moving forward to help with those critical repairs for homes in our community that we know the homeowners have a great need, and just showing that by putting some money towards those, we can get those houses up to code and in safe, decent conditions. By doing this, by building 1 house and completing 5 critical repairs, we have the opportunity to serve 1 household, a single mom with a child. We've selected that family already. She's employed here in Lawrence and is within our guidelines of affordable housing. She is currently completing her homeowner education classes and will complete 200 hours of sweat equity, and is already currently working on that goal. For the other 5 critical repair, those have not been identified yet. However, we'll work with agencies in town, including LMH and Burt Nash, to identify the families that are in need the most. And those restorations will include emergency work, really critical repairs. So mold removal, plumbing issues, things that are making the house unsafe. The total project cost to do these 2 projects is $230,000. We're asking for $50,000, about 22% of the project. We have several sponsors already lined up to help with these projects, and we will have no developer fees, admin, or overhead. That'll all be done by other sources. The outcome for this project is we will have a new homeowner in our community, a mom and her daughter. We will also be supporting her as a local employee by finding a permanent housing solution for her in our community where she works and helps out in our community. And then we'll also be able to help those 5 low-income households receive the significant home repairs they need to be able to live in their homes, which is their most affordable option. At this time, I'm open to any questions.
Ron Gacious, I have chair. Do we have questions from the board for Stacy?
I'm probably a couple years old. Smoking. Closed door, right?
This is Monty Soak, Justice Matters. I have a quick question. The 5 units that are repaired, those are existing, affordable now. They need the infusion of money to keep them habitable. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we identified in the market analysis, recognized that there were over 500 houses that were in poor or fair condition. And so to use some funding to direct towards that, keep those houses affordable, keep them in a condition where if we do repair work now, they're going to be livable for many years to come instead of becoming just a house that isn't livable.
Okay, one more question. Monty Soka, Justice Matters. One more question on that. Did those 5 then become permanently affordable, or is that just the one new build that's permanently affordable?
So great question, Stacy Schroeder with Lawrence Habitat. So for the repairs that cost over $5,000, we will put a lien on that home that states the homeowner must remain in that house for 5 years or until they pay back the entire cost of the project. And those costs are based on income, and obviously the labor is not included. It's just for materials only. With the hope that that conversation, if they would sell that house, obviously we would want that to stay affordable moving forward.
Ron Gacious, I have chair. Are there any other questions for Stacy? Seeing none, Stacy, thank you very much. And next up, we have Burt Nash.
Hello, this is Matthew Falk, Supportive Housing Program Manager with the Burt Nash Community Mental Health Center.
Hi, Matthew.
Hello, thank you for hearing us today. Thank you for all your community support and the work you do. Our application is to seek a little bit of further funding for the transitional supportive housing project. I did have a presentation as well. If I can see if I can, well, there's no sharing, so I'll forego that presentation. In a nutshell, this is a program that it will provide 12 residential beds and 2 residential crisis stabilization beds. The 12 residential beds will provide up to 12 months of transitional supportive housing, and that would be housing that comes with wraparound services to support households who are experiencing homelessness or severe housing insecurity, a severe and persistent mental illness, and extreme or no income within the community, with addressing the challenges in their life and obtaining benefits, and then transitioning into permanent housing within a community-based setting. That project has been underway for several years. The house is actually basically complete. I actually wanted to share a bunch of pictures with you so you could see the kind of the work we've been able to achieve with the help of this board. This board has previously awarded this project. Associated with this project, there are some costs that regarding site work and public improvement that have resulted in more costs. So the bulk of this ask is to shore up those gaps. And I think I would be extremely honest with you and say that, you know, our ask, the gap amount listed on application is $493,000. By no means do we anticipate an award of that amount. Patrick and I have discussed this, and I think it's extremely important for us to say that and to acknowledge that there's a lot of other need in the community, and we fully support those needs. The funds to do this will help us secure additional funding for operations moving forward. So in that sense, anything helps, right? Anything we can get helps. But certainly we don't really anticipate a full award. But this project is set to launch in January. We are finishing up the final kind of touches. The punch-through list is being repaired now, and we are moving quickly to order appliances and furnishings. We have staff hired and under training right now, and we anticipate a January launch time for bringing folks in and starting those services. This project will serve also to support the crisis center as a form of placement. And for folks who go into crisis, who meet the criteria and may not have anywhere else to discharge to, again, they're homeless, they can discharge and be placed into transitions when those vacancies are available. And staff at transitions will also provide a level of supportive service for the cottages, which are the Housing Authority's permanent supportive housing units that are just next door. They're literally on the same property. So we kind of have a dual role. We're fitting a niche or a tier of service within the county's 3-tiered housing service. And we're filling that service not only in the community, but literally on that property for both of the other projects that are slated for that property.
Thank you, Matthew. Are there any questions for Matthew from the advisory board?
Mr. Chair, if I could, this is Diane Stoddard, Assistant City Manager. I was just noting that the Zoom, the way we had it set up, was not enabling the participants to share their screens, but that is now changed. I found the setting for it. So in case that Mr. Falk did have something that he wanted to share, I just wanted him to know he could do that.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. And see. And here we go. Let me. So this is can you see this now? This should be a picture of the front of the house.
Yes.
Okay, this is what the house looks like as of this last weekend or last week on Friday. As you can tell, we're up. This is just a kind of a list of the overall services we're going to provide. I forgot to mention the 2 crisis stabilization beds. Those are 72 hours plus. We can't provide more than 72 hours of service in that location. Those are beds that take in folks who have an acute mental health crisis that is challenging their ability to manage them in their life. And so those folks come in, it provides a safe place for them to be. It provides 24-hour observation and stabilizing interventions to help them identify whatever the underlying issues are in their life that might have caused that kind of crisis, and then connection with services, connection with supports, and discharge planning and safety planning so they can return back to the community with a solid plan, solid supports to address whatever the crisis may have been. Those will be very beneficial to both the folks in the house, but also other programs such as the cottages and the community at large. Those do have to be Medicaid recipients to fill those beds. That's the way we pay for that service. Some of the other supports that we provide for residents of the house include not only just general mental health case management, but our specialized case management services such as SOAR, which is Disability Application Assistance, Supported Employment, IDDT, which is dual diagnosis, case management, dual diagnosis, meaning folks who have a mental health and a substance use treatment or substance use issue, peer support, individual and group therapy, medication services, substance use assessments and treatment. We're partnering with DECA and Heartland Rate Act for that, 24-hour staffing, and we're partnering with Housing Authority for renters education for residents of the house. And then we will, provide support for Tier 1, the crisis center and the cottages. This is kind of a review of our costs. The county is funding the capital cost of this and has pledged $180,000 a year for operating costs. I guess the caveat here is that this capital gap, the extent to which they would be required to pick that up will take money out of the operating costs that would be offered on their behalf in the next few years, until I guess the remaining balance there that they're making up is zero. This is just kind of a brief overview of the blueprint, the finishing blueprint. But I think you probably guys would be more interested in seeing the actual pictures of the inside. So on. As you come into the entryway, you kind of see through the main little floor there. This is kind of what the front door looks like. As you step out of that entryway, to your left, you see the kitchen. This is the actual finished kitchen minus the appliances. There's another view of that. The very back end, that kind of dark room, that's the dining area. And each household member on that far wall will have a cubby that is lockable. They'll have a key to it for them to keep their own personal food items. There will be also community food items, and there will be a food kind of pantry in the basement where we can keep a larger stock of nutritional items for the residents. Moving to the right of the entryway, you enter into the staff area, and then there's a residential restroom right there to the far right, and then that door on the left is the door to the basement. That's what the ground floor restroom looks like. This is the staff area. That window you're looking at on the right is the observation window to one of the crisis observation spaces. Those clients in those spaces have to be under observation. So there'll be a 1-to-1 staff ratio for those individuals. The idea is that they're at risk of safety for harming themselves possibly. So we have to provide observation and support directly. Looking back across the other way of the staff area, there's a staff restroom, and that's the other observation room. There's 2 observation rooms in this space. And this is the supervisor's office. It's on the southeast corner of the building, looking out towards the cottages. This is the main floor living area. The entire house is ADA accessible. There is an elevator that runs from the basement to the 2nd floor. And there's full ADA accessible facilities, restrooms throughout the house. Moving to the basement. In the basement, we have a group space. This space can be shut off for folks to have group therapy sessions, individual therapy sessions, staff meetings, et cetera, just kind of a wider group space. There's storage. That door in the center is storage. The door to the far left is where the food pantry would go. This is looking back across from the stairwell. You can see the elevator. That door to your far left is an intake space, and the door to the far right is more storage. This is a stairwell coming from the west side of the building down into that intake space. So the folks that we bring into the house, we don't have to bring them initially through the front door. The idea is that we need to be able to provide some control around what they bring in, including pests and bed bugs, but also making sure they're not bringing illegal substances or paraphernalia or weapons into the house. So we've used this space. This space will also have a washer and dryer in it, so they can launder some of their wares, and it has a fully ADA accessible restroom in case they need to shower and clean, depending on where they're coming from folks who may be homeless or the housing that may have some personal hygiene issues they want to see to the moment they enter the house. And we can launder their clothes and wash it and other items they have. That's that restroom. It's just right off to the right of that entry space. It's in kind of the same area. This is the laundry facility, laundry room. We'll have 2 washers and 2 dryers to serve the residents of the house. And then moving upstairs to the living space. It's the stairwell moving up. To your right, that's where the stairwell comes out. There's bedrooms on the north and south side.
This is Monty Soak of Justice Matters. I have a question, actually a couple questions. Is it okay to do that now?
Sides of the building, and restrooms are on the east end. Sure.
So your proposal has 12 beds. Does that include the 2 stabilization beds, or are those 2 additional beds?
Those are 2 additional beds. So at any given time, there could be 14. Yes, there could be 14 residential occupants of the house. 12 longer term, up to 12 months, and then those 2. We really aim to keep that crisis time 72 hours or less. That's our aim. If they need more than 72 hours, that's a strong indication that they probably need a higher level of service. And so we would be seeking to place them in a more robust psychiatric care facility at that point in time.
Monty Soak of Justice Matters. Well, this is a beautiful facility, and I'm assuming you're showing us this because the new facility will be very similar in nature. And then I had one other comment, and that was that some of the other affordable housing projects are able to get their city permit fees waived. And I noticed in your budget that you have those in there. So that might be another place of cost savings that you might pursue. Just a comment. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll continue on. We're almost done here. Elevator space. Wrong direction. This is a second living area. There'll be television. This is looking back to the east. This will be kind of a staff nook up in that area. The staff, we'll have staff members again who will staff this facility 24/7, not only for crisis observation, but also for the residents who provided support for them all day long. And so that'll be a space for them to also be upstairs and observe. These are the restrooms that are upstairs. Again, they're fully ADA accessible. There are 2 fully ADA accessible type A qualifications, and the other 2 are type B, which we can convert into type A if we need. But we have 3 type A accessible restrooms in the facility. This is the hall on the north side. And this is the back of the house. There's a back porch. We will have, patio furniture and facilitate gatherings. And this is
Thank you, Matthew.
Yes.
Oh, are there other questions for Matthew?
This is Christina Gentry, citizen at large and person receiving assistance. I had a question about the observation rooms, and I didn't really get a chance to zone in or zoom in on my phone. But in the interest of safe spaces and security and personal privacy, are the individuals who will be staying in this facility being filmed, or are there like one-way mirrors? Or describe observation to me. I know that may seem a little bit of a funny question, but I don't think so. I feel like people who are home insecure may be susceptible to a few other things, including loss of personal privacy. So yeah, maybe expand on a little bit of what that observation is.
So the mental health, those are mental health crisis beds, and those are not restricted to folks who are housing insecure. Anyone who's having a mental health crisis would be served by that. And these are beds that would serve as an extension of the crisis center. So it's actually meeting a similar need. Per state requirements, when someone is receiving crisis services, and it's explicitly services because they are not safe, physically safe, that we're required to be able to have a one-to-one staff with them 24/7. We're required to have certain check-ins like every 15 minutes at the minimum. So, you know, this observation is working with them and being present with them to make sure that, one, they are remaining safe from harming themselves and or harming others, and also just to provide direct support around what do we do next? What's your next step? Again, this is up to 72 hours ideally. So our goal is to not only help them stabilize, but also engage them in a pretty regular basis to start working on solutions and towards discharge back into the community. Because the idea is that, you know, and this is voluntary. This is not involuntary. So this is all voluntary service. We don't have the capacity to provide an involuntary service. The level of service that we're seeking to meet here is also folks who wouldn't need to be restrained in either chemically or physically. We're not going to be taking that level of service into this facility. So the idea, though, is to get them back out into a less restrictive environment, i.e. their home or back out into the community. So observation in this sense is that, yes, we need to be able to have eyes on them and to be able to look into the room and say, hey, are they doing okay? Are they you know, hurting themselves? Are they all right? And that those are actually state policy requirements and best practices around this type of service.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew. I had one more question. You said that the $493,000 was not anticipated, that full award was not anticipated by you. What would be a funded award that makes good, solid impact?
You know, I thought about this long and hard. And what would I do if I was a member of the board? I think a solid impact for us would be around the $200,000, $250,000 range. That would, I mean, I think that would really solve all our problems in an honest way.
Thank you. This is Christina Gentry. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew. Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. Are there any other questions for Matthew?
Yes.
Yes, go right ahead, Paul.
Paul Newsom, Lawrence Board of Home Builders. The site work and the public improvement cost overruns, are any of those potentially COVID related, or was it a change in the original scope of work that might have incurred those overruns?
No, it's not. It's not COVID related. You know, there was, and this is not blame. This is not, you know, no one, I think this is a new project. This is the first time we've kind of done something like this. The site itself was an interesting site. I think the main issue is that up front, the engineering requirements for the site and the drainage, where that needed to be taking place, that was, I guess, a delay in being assessed fully. So when we started the project, we had one number, and that evolved over the next 6 to 8 months of the lifetime of the project. And as the engineering requirements got more hashed out. So it's not COVID related.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I guess one thing that, and I've talked about this with other agencies who have projects, and, you know, one thing we'll do in the future is really make sure that engineering and those types of things that are associated with any given project are thoroughly vetted, you know, well in advance. And I'm not saying to say that they weren't. I think what happened is that there were some weird things that took place. For example, tapping the water to get utilities. Well, the closest tap is a cement water main. And the only way to tap a cement water main, there's only one company in the entire country, I think, who does that. It's extremely expensive. It's like $100,000 plus to do that. So we couldn't tap the water main there as a result. And that's the water main coming right off the water treatment plant. So instead we had to go quite a distance away to actually get into the water. That was an unforeseen cost because no one realized until they actually dug down and got down into the nitty gritty that was a cement main, and no one realized, oh, no one can do that. So things like that were associated with this. Drainage around the facility. If people don't remember, for example, this picture you're looking at now, before this was a ditch. It was a totally unimproved section. Yes, sir.
Matthew, I'll let folks that have questions about the difficulties of the construction project and cost overruns follow up with you separately.
Sure. Be happy to follow up.
Are there any other questions for Matthew? Seeing none. Matthew, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next applicant is Tenants to Homeowners, the Libertad Lawrence project.
Yes, hello, it's Heather Bradley Geary from Vecino Group. I'm here to present with Nicholas Ward from Tenants to Homeowners.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you. I will go ahead and share my screen here. So thank you so much. As I mentioned, my name is Heather Bradley Geary. I'm the Director of Supportive Housing with Vecino Group, and we're here to present Libertad Lawrence to all of you. This is a partnership between the Vecino Group and Tenants to Homeowners. Nicholas Ward is also here today, and he's going to give some more details about the actual project. But just wanted to give you a quick overview and a little bit of information about Vecino, just because we are new. I live in Kansas City. I'm a KU grad, so I'm not new to the KU or Lawrence community, but Vecino has never developed in Lawrence before. We have in Kansas. So just a little bit about Libertad Lawrence. It's a supportive housing community that we would like to develop on the west side. And again, Nicholas is going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a minute. But just a little bit about the partnership. So this would be a partnership between Vecino Group and Tenants to Homeowners. Tenants to Homeowners, of course, would be the 51% owner of the project. There's the split of the developer fee. Vecino would be taking on all the guarantees of this project, meaning if for any reason the project goes bad, Vecino Group would be on the hook for those guarantees. And then as you can see on your screen, we would share the cash flow, we would pay for all the pre-development costs, and then be the provider of the social service dollars that we hope to partner with Family Promise on to provide those services. So just so you know a little bit about Vecino, we're a national supportive housing developer. We develop throughout the country. We are a for-profit developer, but we actually have a very social mission. So everything we do is for the greater good. We have what we call at Vecino our gut check, which basically means any project that we develop, that we serve, has to serve a higher purpose, has to do good in the community. Just a little bit about me. I'm an MSW, I'm a social worker. So this is really my mission in life, is to end homelessness with partners across the country. So Vecino was formed in 2011. Our first offices were in Springfield, Missouri, but now we're on a national basis. So we have offices throughout the country. We have developed 20 supportive housing communities in 8 states. And ended homelessness for about 500 households. In our portfolio for supportive housing, we do integrated housing, meaning we develop affordable housing with set-asides of permanent supportive housing within those communities. So in our supportive housing portfolio, we have about 1,300 units of housing. So Nicholas, I'm going to flip it to you, if you don't mind, to give an overview of the actual project.
Sure, thank you. Nicholas Ward with Tenants to Homeowners here. This West Lawrence development, Libertad, will provide 50 units of affordable housing for Douglas County residents who are at or below 60% of average median income. Of those 50 units, as was said, 12 will provide supportive service housing with the added benefit of an on-site caseworker. So that's really great. We'll actually have an office and a caseworker on site with one of our partnerships for this project. The community has been vocal in its request of more affordable development on the west end of town in Libertad Lawrence, and our partnership with Vecino is a direct response to that request. Lawrence, like many communities, has suffered from systems that serve to segregate our community based on race. This has left the majority of persons of color residing on the east side of town. Life expectancy on the east side is roughly 8 years less than that of our west side homeowners and residents. So this is a really big deal and something to consider and something we are considering. No doubt this metric also serves to illuminate economic status and the effects of structural racism. Dispersing housing opportunities helps to ensure equal access to employment, schools, services, food access, and fewer transportation barriers that reduce racial inequality. Libertad Lawrence is just such an opportunity. In the submitted application, you'll see that the donation of 10 acres of land was originally listed as $250,000 as a match to the requested funds. Upon a land appraisal completed after the submission of this application, the land is actually valued at $560,000 and proving the nearly 22-to-1 ratio match of Housing Trust Fund requested funds. So I think it was like $21.40 match per dollar that we'd be requesting here from the Housing Trust Fund. That's just a brief overview. If you have any questions, Heather and I will be able to hopefully answer them for you.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to show you some quick, just so you're aware of some of our other work in other communities. This is a community in Salt Lake City that's 80 units, 23 set aside for folks that are chronically homeless. This is a little bit about, or shows a little bit of our work here. And then this community here, Entrada Saratoga Springs, is in Saratoga Springs, New York, serves transition age youth in the Saratoga Springs community.
And Heather, excuse me, Thomas Al Lawrence, Board of Realtors, if you wouldn't mind just showing us kind of the structures, the decor doesn't really make a lot of impact. If you would only show us the, I mean, perhaps the other members are interested in the decor, but I'd like to see what the projects look like.
Yeah, so here's the one on your screen now is an aerial view of Saratoga Springs. So as mentioned, this is a integrated supportive housing community for the affordable side is families. The set aside is transition age youth that are homeless. So youth 18 to 24. So this is a structural view of that. Backing up here, just so you can kind of see the structural view of Bodie, you'll see here on the right-hand side, that's what that building looks like. Now we are, for Libertad Lawrence, the vision is much like you saw on that first, there you go, that first shot where it would be more, it wouldn't be a single family, one building, it would be more of row houses, townhouse look. So this is a sketch actually of one of our communities in Joplin, Missouri, but I'm thinking that that's what the design would look like for the Libertad Lawrence. And then last example, just for structural, this is Talia. You'll see on the right-hand side of your screen, that's also just a one building, but this is a community in Springfield, Missouri for survivors of domestic violence. So this is 46 units with 23 set aside for survivors.
Thank you. And to my fellow board members, if I stepped out of line there to just to kind of bypass the decor, I hope it wasn't a problem.
No problem. Can I mention one more thing? Is there time for that?
Certainly.
Nicholas Ward again with Tenants to Homeowners. I just wanted to mention that this proposal is for 100% affordability. So we're not looking at a certain percentage of the units being affordable. So we're looking at 100% affordability here. And then unlike other LIHTC proposals that you've heard, programs that would be utilizing that program, that funding. We're also committing to a purchase of the property after the 30-year end on the tax credit compliance, so that we'd be holding this permanently in trust, permanently in affordability. We're not looking to move this building into someone else's ownership at that time. So we're really committed that the quality of the construction, the quality of the structure itself is something that we're going to want to steward in perpetuity.
So Nicholas, is this a Lawrence Community Land Trust project? In other words, does this go into land trust? Is that how you ensure the permanent affordability?
Absolutely, yeah. So this will eventually go into, the land will go into the trust, which is being, R.D. Johnson has donated the land, and then we're currently working with the city right now on another 10 acres. I believe it's either 10 or 14 acres of city land that abuts that property. Great. That would become a part of a larger development that would include single family housing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for the applicants? Heather, I have a question. What is so it's a LIHTC project, and what is your obligated period of affordability?
So so for the tax credits, it's 15 years. However, we will also be applying for National Housing Trust Fund dollars through KHRC, which is a 30-year compliance period. So at minimum, it'd be a 30-year affordability. Now, I will say this, Vecino Group isn't interested in flipping to not affordable projects. So we've never, at the end of our compliance period, we're not going to flip it to market housing. It's not what we do as developers. It's not what we're interested in doing.
Thank you, Heather.
Monty,
Yeah, thank you.
Justice Matters. I got a question. If you, assuming you get the LIHTC funding and the federal grant money and whatever, and we end up in another round of funding, is the project scalable so that if next year comes around and you could get another $400,000 or would be interested in applying, could you get another 10 units, another 20 units? Is it scalable to that extent, or is the site scalable for future projects?
Yeah, great question. So we would want to start out with 40 to 50 units. I mean, that's what the tax credit application will go in as. But yes, the land is big enough, if we're able to secure that city land also that Nicholas mentioned, that we could possibly do another phase.
Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. Heather, I have another question. This one, finance related. Given your current application timeline, when do you need cash in hand from the trust fund?
So we wouldn't need cash in hand. So the pre-application to the state of Kansas is due on January 22nd. And that's really just showing site control and showing tenants to homeowners and Vecinos, our experience in developing LIHTC communities. And then if we're accepted into pre-app, our full app would not go until May 7th. That's when we wouldn't need cash in hand. We would just, of course, need the commitment, the letter of commitment showing that the trust fund is committing a certain amount of funding to the project. But timeline wise, then we wouldn't find out till July if we're funded for tax credits. Then it usually takes us about 6 months to close, on the credits. So to answer your question, we would need cash in hand probably around December of 21.
Thank you. Other questions for Nicholas or Heather? Yes, Paul. You're on mute, Paul.
Sorry, Paul Newsom, Lawrence Home Builders. It's a great piece of land that I think is awesome. It got donated. It's an interesting piece of land. Maybe some potentials for unknowns to be encountered when the process starts. How would any overruns that aren't captured here, how would those be taken up or addressed, and overruns in pricing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have researched the land extensively, the folks in our office, and you're absolutely right. We think there might be some, not floodplain, but like you said, there's also the incline, a drop off of the project where we'd have to do some grading of the land. So the great thing about Vecino is we do a lot of that in-house. And so the good and the bad is that we eat that money. So if we come in over budget, then Vecino eats those costs.
Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. I have a couple other questions for you, Heather. I noted in the application that the nearest bus stop is 1.3 miles away. Have you had any discussions with the city about public transportation?
Nicholas, do you mind? I know you have had those conversations. You mind if I flip it to you?
Yep. So Ron, thank you for noticing that and for that question. We've made an initial outreach to City Transit to have a discussion about that, to see, looking forward in a 5-year plan, if there is anything showing that transit would extend that way. If you're looking at the map and some of the materials that we submitted, there's been a significant amount of development that's happened over there in the last few years. It's also the location of Langston Hughes Elementary. And so with there not being a bus stop that comes up to any of those new houses or that elementary school, there's also a school/church that's there as well. I think I'm imagining something that would come up in the future, but we are beginning those talks with the city to see where we're at in terms of bus stop being brought closer to that site, because I know that's something that will be a consideration for federal funding.
And a follow-up question, do you have any estimate on the number of kids that your units might be putting into Langston Hughes School?
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but we're looking at 40 to 50 units, and there will be 3 bedrooms involved in those. Mm-hmm. So it will be a significant amount of kiddos living at the site.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Nicholas or Heather?
Oh, I'm sorry. I want to answer the chat. We're talking about where the land is actually located at. And so it's at the intersection of K10 and Bob Billings. And it's on you're testing my directional.
Southeast corner.
Is it southeast, Nicholas? Is that right? Yes, Monty's saying yes. Okay. I apologize. I do know where the land is. I'm just not real great with the directions.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your presentations.
Thank you so much for having us. Appreciate all you do for the city of Lawrence. Thank you.
Next up is tenants to homeowners with the ARM presentation.
Nicholas Ward with Tenants to Homeowners. You'll be hearing from me again. So I'm just going to give you kind of a verbal rundown of the program. I'm assuming you all have the application in front of you, those of you on the board. But this program, I think, is something that really lends itself to being imagined fairly easy. We've been doing some work with especially since COVID has come on, we've been talking with a lot of landlords. That's something that's come up through the HSC program. And by and large, we've found out that there are more properties in the community that have the potential to be rented out that are sitting vacant. And these are not vacant in the sense that utilities are shut off and they're showing up in the city rosters as vacant or vacated or abandoned properties, but they're homes simply that the owners have for whatever reason, chosen not to rent out or sell. And so we're with this program, with the ARM Affordable Rental Management Program, we're acknowledging that there's an existing stock of potentially affordable housing that's just sitting there latent. These habitable homes that remain vacant or out of compliance often remain in ill repair because of external circumstances. It's a death in the family of the owner no longer wants to deal with tenants, or there's repairs that for one reason or another render the prospect of repair and rental prohibitive to the owner. So recognizing that new development costs are very high, especially with the recent roughly 20% cost increase for wood and other construction materials since COVID, development of affordable units by nonprofit agencies is often slow, as we recognize, and yielding fewer available units than what is required by our community need. I think that's very obvious. As a supplement to new construction projects, we've developed the ARM Affordable Rental Management Program as a way to realize this latent potential in our community's housing stock, existing housing stock. Utilizing our on-staff general contractor, TTH is able to bring units up to code and up to TTH standards with repairs averaging $5,000 per program home. In trade for this improvement, owners agree to a 3-year rental management contract and a 5-year affordability agreement, which allows TTH first right of refusal for purchase of the home should the owner choose to sell within that 5-year period. If a home is sold prior to the 5 years of affordability by the owner, then the owner is contractually bound to repay a prorated amount back into the ARM program. So that's roughly $1,000 per year is what that would be prorated out to. ARM allows private owners an avenue to support the affordable housing market as partners. It ensures that a vulnerable segment of our community's housing stock remains in good repair. And most importantly, it generates new geographically diverse affordable rental options at a rate unachievable by any existing local program. Since August, TTH has brought 4 properties into the ARM program, each requiring unique repairs. Our end goal of ARM is that each of the participating properties eventually be purchased within trust to serve affordability in perpetuity. For those properties that do not enter the trust and serve only their 5-year affordability period, the community is receiving 1 new unit of affordability for $1,000 per year, with the added benefit of the improved housing stock and relationships being formed between nonprofit agency and the private owner. Circumstances of the pandemic have put a greater emphasis on the need to increase affordable rental units. ARM is a new tool in our ever-expanding affordable housing toolkit, and we look forward to partnering with the Housing Trust Fund as the program enters its first year of community service. That's kind of a brief overview of the program. Very basically, we'd be bringing existing rental stock that's not currently in use back into use through the program and partnering with private owners, and we'd be making repairs to those homes through this program. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Questions for Nicholas? You did a great job, and it's pretty straightforward. Nicholas, thank you. I don't think we have any questions at this time.
Thank you, Ron.
Chair's going to take a 5-minute break. We'll come back. I've got 12:28. We'll come back at 12:33, and we'll have our last 4 presentations. Thank you.
There we go. Maybe? Yeah.
Ooh.
Very straightforward. Folks, as you come back, please turn your video feeds back on, and we'll take a head count, make sure we've got quorum of our board. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. We are good. Everyone is back. Thank you all very much. Next up is Independence and their accessible housing repair and modification program.
There we go. Good morning. My name is Amy Ballinger. I'm a community engagement manager here at Independence Inc. and also the head of our accessible housing program. Our program is pretty straightforward, and I know some of you are quite familiar with it. So I'll spend a couple of minutes just talking about why we are that essential component of accessibility in the affordable housing discussion. And I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. I have two screens going. Can you see my slideshow there?
Yes, Independent Sync Accessible Housing Program. You're up.
Sounds good. So I'm going to start off just kind of with mission alignment. Again, my purpose is kind of going to be just to drive home that alignment of the necessary accessibility piece to the puzzle. So this, of course, is the Affordable Housing Advisory Board mission statement, which talks about access to safe, quality, affordable housing and supportive services necessary to maintain independent living. And of course, as a Center for Independent Living, that completely aligns with our mission. Access to housing, safe access to housing is absolutely essential to our cause. And I'll talk a minute about how, of course, access doesn't just mean being able to afford it, but being able to physically and safely get in and maneuver around one's home. And you'll have to excuse my voice. I've got a little bit of a cold going on. And I just wanted to show how we meet, of course, perfectly with goal number 3 on the Affordable Housing Advisory Board short-term goals, where it talks about low and moderate income persons with accessibility needs, able to get improvements they need and or find visitable and accessible housing. So we'll show how our program fills, at least in part, that goal. I want to focus again on access, one definition being the ability, right, or permission to approach, enter, speak with, or use, and just kind of drive home that every person has that human right to be able to access their home. Of course, it's mandatory in new construction and rehab, which we so much appreciate. Our modification program can be a perfect supplement to the whole landscape of affordable housing. A large portion of our clientele desire to stay in their homes that are already affordable. But in order to do that, we have to have this home modification piece. Without that, they're at severe risk for institutionalization. And so leaning into this right to independent living and access and ability to live just like anyone else, it is just imperative that we have some sort of program out there that allows these modifications to help people remain safely in their home, which according to our program, they have to be within affordable rents. This is just, again, more about that independent living piece. It's just imperative to include people with disabilities in this conversation. And I want to talk just a minute or two about disability not just being someone who needs wheelchair access. You know, there's permanent disabilities, temporary disabilities, some are at birth, some are acquired, injury, accident. All of us will experience disabilities of some sort throughout our life. And so our program, although ramps are a very large part of our program, we also serve people who use canes, walkers, rollators, who maybe don't need a whole ramp, but need low-rise steps. Someone who can walk independently, but maybe can't step into their tub or shower. So they need that modification in order to safely and fully live and function inside their home. Somebody who can sit and stand and is mobile, but has to have a higher toilet or a lower sink, things like that. So there's all kinds of modifications necessary to serve the disabled population in being able to stay in their current home safely and effectively. So who do we serve? We serve people with low income and disabilities. These are among the most vulnerable of our populations. We serve any sort of disability that leads to a need for any kind of home modification. We follow the income guidelines of up to 80% of the median family income. Residents, of course, who live within the city limits. The rental units have to meet the affordable rent guidelines, of course. A large portion of who we serve are people transitioning from an institution setting back into their home. Oftentimes people who are in like short-term rehab. It's often required that they have either ramp access or low-rise steps or grab bars, things like this, in order to be released from these institutions. Oftentimes people who are elderly and have been put in a nursing home decide they want to transition back into either their home that they left or a home with a family member. And this almost always requires some sort of modification. And I want to reiterate too that we advocate directly with landlords over and over every single project to make sure that these modifications can stay in place. They're not required to do that. A landlord can say, yes, we will allow you to do these modifications, but before you leave, you have to put everything back as it were. And we advocate with them directly to make sure that this isn't a requirement. And we've never had one asked to have it put back. So what that's doing is allowing the affordable housing that's already on the market, and whether this is, apartments or duplexes, multiplexes, or single family dwellings, we're just creating more and more accessible housing that's already affordable. The types of modifications, I kind of touched on this briefly, but just a little bit, and this certainly isn't exhaustive, but this is, these are some of our prime projects. There's the ramps, and you'll see a couple here. Low-rise steps with handrails for people maybe who just use a cane. Widened doorways, so that if someone does end up in a wheelchair as a wheelchair user, they often need to have those doorways widened. Safety rails, grab bars, handheld shower units, accessible height toilet and sinks, roll-in showers, stair lifts, and exterior chair lifts are all projects that we have handled before. And here are just a few examples of those. This is a before. This is a trailer home where this gal, Sweet Kathy, could not get out of her home anymore. And so we were able to put her in low-rise steps on this side and then a platform on this side for her to safely exit. This is a good example of a home that is a rental home currently, and it does fall well within affordable rent category. And this just had some poorly maintained and very dangerous steps on the front. And the tenant currently uses a cane and will probably be in a wheelchair before too long. And so we were able to turn this current affordable rent unit or home into a fully accessible one for him. And that, of course, will stay on the market when he's gone, when he leaves. So this is just some examples of some very simple but extremely necessary modifications that we do, including, again, elongated toilets are another thing. These grab bars, both within showers and just on the walls themselves. And again, a mobile home that got a fully accessible exterior ramp for a couple, both of whom, the husband and wife, found themselves unable to navigate the stairs. I put this slide in here in case anybody on the board wants to talk about why we need this funding as opposed to the CDBG funding. If you want me to go over this, I absolutely will be happy to. We've found ourselves in a position where the HUD funded program just does not work for us anymore for various reasons. And in the interest of time, I'll let you ask about that if you'd like to, and I'll be happy to pull this back up and go over it. And so that's all I've got for now. I just want to reiterate, we're helping to make these affordable housing units accessible just one by one. We hope to do anywhere from 6 to 10 modification projects. That number can go up greatly depending on how much funding we receive and also what types of projects we do. Ramps, of course, are the most expensive, and they can range anywhere from $4,000 for a shorter ramp up to 9,000 plus for something like the large turnback ramp that was on the mobile home. But once we start doing bathroom modifications and things, those, of course, some of those are only $800 or $900 a project, and those go up to a couple thousand if it's like a roll-in shower. So it's very hard for us to determine exactly the number of projects that we can do, but 6 to 10 is our goal, and we hope to be able to do even more. So I will turn it over to questions.
Thank you, Amy. Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. Do we have questions from the board for Amy? Any questions for Amy?
This is Monty Sokup, Justice Matters. I feel bad I'm asking a question on every proposal, but is there anything in the program about permanence of affordability? You invest $5,000 to $10,000 in a house, and then it has the potential for going out of the affordability zone. So I wonder if there's any opportunity to look at something like that.
Sure. And I will say that just by nature of the consumers that we serve and the type of housing that they're in, often it's mobile homes, apartments that are just historically known as the lower rent apartments. They're just really by nature of the places that they live, there's very little risk of those going out of the affordable rent because they weren't purposefully designed and put there to begin with. They just are the more affordable, smaller homes and rentals and things like that in the community. We have a time period for each renter. We ask that they live there at least a year, and often the people that we serve are there permanently. I mean, that's their home. People with disabilities often have very few choices to move. And so once somebody is in an accessible home, they're going to be there for years. But, I don't know of a way to control, I feel like we already have to work with the landlords quite a bit just to get some of these things and to, show them that that it's a good investment to do this. I'm not sure that making them commit to, sustaining the rent for a certain amount of time is something that we would be able to do. We'd certainly love to look at that if that's something you all would like to see. But historically, I mean, they're just lower rent places anyway, and aren't going to be rehabbed and sold for more generally. I don't know if that's a good enough answer, but.
No, Monte Soka, AHAB, or Justice Matters. Thank you. Thank you. That's a good answer.
I have a question. This is Edith Guffey, member at large. And Amy, this may be a question that's actually bigger than you, but I'll ask it anyway. Once we have access and have invested in a home like this with community dollars, what authority or what access do we have with a landlord as far as overall upkeep of the property?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. So what we do is we just advocate. If we were to, unfortunately, the reality is if we were to require them to sign something that says they will for 10 years or 20 years upkeep this, to a certain point, and that we would come out and do checks and things like that, we probably would not have success in getting landlords to comply. And that's just the reality of it. A lot of what we do, though, is projects with homeowners. And so, they are responsible for their own upkeep. But as far as that connection between upkeep and either the tenant or the landlord, that really at this point, with the scope of our program, is kind of in their hands, unfortunately. But again, in the years that we've been doing this, overwhelmingly, landlords see this, after we do our advocacy with them, they see this as an investment. They see the need, they see that it does make it more widely available to citizens, and they're more than willing to keep it and upkeep it and that sort of thing. But no, at this point, we have no ability to regulate the upkeep of that once the current tenant moves out.
Thank you. Ron, I would like to put this kind of conversation on the agenda for later on.
Very good. I think that makes a lot of sense, Edith. Thank you. Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. Amy, I have a couple of questions. You mentioned that other sources of funding for this kind of work have more restrictions. And that's one of the reasons you've come and asked the trust fund for some funding, because you could have a program with fewer restrictions. Do
Yes.
you have any other source of funds that you're able to use that have fewer restrictions, or would the trust fund dollars be the only dollars that you're spending under that category?
Yeah, unfortunately, and you know, when I presented last year, I heard loud and clear that this isn't necessarily a fund that you want, you know, for people to repeatedly come to this well. Unfortunately, as a Center for Independent Living, our resources are very limited. We have a wide array of programs, most of which are free. And so we do not have any other. We've had single grants before that are specific in time and scope, where we've been able to do some small things. But we really don't have access at this point to funds to sustain this program beyond this. So again, that's just the unfortunate reality of what we do. We look for grants and we look for funding other places. This is just such a specific thing that doesn't seem to fall into the narrative of most grant and funding opportunities out there.
All right, thank you very much, Amy.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions for Amy from the advisory board? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next up is United Way of Douglas County and the collaborative effort.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Leah Roseland from the United Way of Douglas County.
Hi, Leah.
And I'm joined by Brenda Wall from Family Promise of Lawrence and Chastity Bryan from Tenants to Homeowners. And we also have with us Gabby Sprague, who has been working as a temporary housing advocate, in case you have any questions. I am going to share my screen with you all. We have just a short presentation, trying to keep it very succinct. I know that you all are really busy, and just wanted to extend our gratitude for your service to our community and for letting us take this opportunity to share our project with you all. Is my screen being shared?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So the proposal before you is on behalf of the Housing Stabilization Collaborative, with the United Way of Douglas County acting as the fiscal sponsor. It is on behalf of Family Promise of Lawrence, the United Way, and Tenants to Homeowners. A brief history of our collaborative. In February of 2020, Family Promise first began serving households as a best practice for homelessness prevention and housing stabilization with a new HUMI grant that they had received for housing stabilization collaboratives. Then COVID hit, and all of us in social services saw before our eyes everything play out that had been in our worst fears. We knew that the siloed social service landscape was not best serving families, and that the minimal safety net funding available in our community was leaving a lot of people behind. It was increasing local homelessness and just not meeting the need. Luckily, thanks to the HUMI grant that seeded this stabilization, in April of 2020, Tenants to Homeowners joined the collaborative and was able to start serving single households while Family Promise served families with children. In July of 2020, the collaborative received a Spark Cares grant and brought additional partners into the collaborative. And those partners consist of the Willow Domestic Violence Center, Ballard Center, Salvation Army, Centro Hispano, the Lawrence Community Shelter, the Success by Six Coalition, as well as the Lawrence Chamber of Commerce and the United Way of Douglas County. And we are all working together to ensure that families stay housed and that we provide wraparound supports to provide them the supports that they need to do so successfully. In October of 2020, simultaneously, thanks to a CARES grant, the United Way of Douglas County started our Housing Advocate and Resource Navigation Program. And we really pivoted to support the Housing Stabilization Collaborative, seeing the great need for housing supports in our community. So the project is in alignment with HUD recommended strategy of housing navigation for increasing equitable access to housing and is an evidence-based practice for housing stability. One central key to that I want to highlight is equitable. We've heard from a lot of incredible projects today. And we have a network of incredible social services, but they only go so far as people are able to find out about them and successfully access them. That was a challenge before COVID. If you can imagine a family in crisis being given sort of a map of social service providers and to get stabilized for housing, they are having to work with each unique different social service provider in a different building, in a different intake form. Every person that they're working with are retelling their trauma, and every person or every social service agency is just seeing a piece of the pie of their need. And so that household or family, while they are in crisis, they are having to go advocate for themselves as well as navigate the really complex social service landscape. COVID brought in a lot of new systems users. In other words, families who had lost employment or income that had never accessed social services before. And they started reaching out and realized just how confusing it is. And so by having housing advocates and resource navigators coupled with direct family supports for stable housing, working with families and individuals, it minimizes the impact of trauma. It's a proven strategy to reduce homelessness, and it wraps support around that family so that we are working together as providers to ensure that their housing is stabilized, and therefore minimizing the cost to our entire community in terms of public safety and the cost of homelessness. I'm going to turn it over to Brenda and Chastity to talk about our impact so far.
Thanks, Leah. This is Brenda with Family Promise of Lawrence, and thank you for this opportunity. As you can see from the numbers that we have here, the impact on our community is significant with the CARES funding that we've received, with how this program has been operating. By providing these funds, the HSC has prevented homelessness for about 500 households, over 1,000 individuals, and over 600 children. So that's, at least 635 children who didn't have to lose their homes in the midst of a pandemic. And from the Family Promise perspective, the cost to keep those kids housed is on average only about $850 per child. So that's a significant impact with very little cost really per child. And as Leah mentioned, because of the
collaboration we were able to do with other agencies in our community. It really has been a community-wide program. Participation, of course, from landlords and property managers was required, and so that has been significant relationship building with those entities in our community. And the Chamber of Commerce was a significant help for us too, to build those relationships. So with this collaborative, as Leah has mentioned, we've already have a community group working in this way, and to be able to provide a navigator to help families access these resources would really be a significant improvement, I think, in how this program could work. Thank you.
Do you have anything to add, Chastity, or should I continue?
Hi, this is Chastity with Tenants to Homeowners. I think that what Brenda has stated so far and what you've stated so far really speak to the need, and the outcomes really show that. So I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Down at the bottom, we drew to your attention, the need still exists, but the funding to support is gone. Of course, not all funding is gone, but the agencies are back to pre-CARES funding. The grant of $850,000 was distributed from July to December. And with the decrease and elimination of that supplemental funding, we as a community really are concerned about what this means for homelessness. The piece that always sticks out to me, of course, serving singles and our elders is vitally important, but thinking about children living in homelessness and what that means not only for our community, and what that says about us as a community, but what that means for those children, what that means for those children in terms of lost educational opportunities, health consequences that may last a lifetime, and of course the trauma of homelessness, which cannot be understated, that we as a community will pay for in some way, whether it's through housing so that they can have a stable home environment growing up, or perhaps later in life through other punitive systems. What housing stabilization means is that we are working with families and individuals to assess barriers to housing and housing stability. We're prioritizing securing and maintaining housing for those families. We're providing wraparound support, advocacy, and navigation so that they can stabilize their housing. And then stable housing means healthy communities and cost savings to taxpayers. And navigation, advocacy, and case management is critical to household and community success. It's critical to stabilizing housing. When people have chronic health conditions, when there are other factors in their life that make housing stability difficult, it's really important that we're providing those wraparound support. So again, that they can stay in their house, which saves us money as taxpayers. By investing in stable housing, as opposed to rehousing people once we as a community have accepted that they have gone into homelessness, we are seeing incurred costs. So there's almost a 50% reduction to the taxpayer in stabilizing housing, as opposed to, again, housing somebody once they have become homeless. And this provides support both to landlords in terms of, by providing those case management and navigation and other supports, we are providing some security to the landlords that their properties will be maintained, that their rent will be paid. And then of course, we're also supporting those families and children so that they can grow up, have steady employment, maintain their health, and contribute to our community. So again, just want to reiterate that the Housing Stabilization Collaborative is about healthy families and a thriving community for Douglas County. And we really hope to count you all as partners in this journey. So all of us would be happy to take any questions you might have. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to state, in case you missed it in the proposal, we will, through this proposal, serve at least 140 households for 1 year. That's providing 3 to 6 months of what is categorized in our AHAB as vouchers, but then a year of supportive services. The AHAB funds would be approximately 56% of the project budget. So you can see that all of the collaborative partners are highly invested in seeing this project success. And we will serve families up to 50% of the area median income. Sorry, I forgot to add that. Thank you for your time.
This is Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. Leah, I have a couple of questions. You just said that the trust fund dollars would be used for 3 to 6 months of vouchers and a year of services, and that the AHAB funds would be 56% of the budget. I don't see a document in your application that reflects those figures. I see a budget submitted that shows the total budget being the 291,400 with all of it coming from AHAB. Is this a component of a larger budget? I don't understand.
So if you look at the project revenue information tab, you will see that the actual project budget is larger than that. Every grant application is different, and I apologize if we didn't complete the supportive services.
Okay, I'm looking at the wrong document.
Okay. Yeah, so we showed our match support under the project revenue information.
So my follow-up question is then, you show on your allocation of how you're spending the $291,000 that it's $59,000 for personnel, $32,400 for fees and services, and $200,000 for direct support. So is that $200,000 for direct support, is that voucher expense?
The way I understand it, the way AHAB categorizes it, yes, that would be direct financial supports for families that would enable them to stay housed.
Okay.
And Brenda and Chastity, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
My other question then is, of the other resources that are generated for the program, for the full $518,000 budget, what portion of those funds are used for direct housing support, and what portion of those funds are spent on services?
I apologize if I'm misunderstanding. Are you categorizing services in terms of personnel or?
Anything other than a voucher cost? Are the trust fund dollars the exclusive source of funding for the vouchers, or are any of the other resources being used to fund vouchers also?
We have right now between 70 and 95,000 that is being contributed in addition for support. So that's coming from the HUMI Foundation, from the United Way of Douglas County, or Tenants to Homeowners or Family Promise in other ways. So that is not coming out of the Housing Trust Fund budget.
And that's direct support for housing costs?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Leah, Brendy, or Chastity from board members? I can only see a few faces on the screen while we're screen sharing. So if you have any questions, speak up. Thank you. Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Douglas County Housing Authority.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Galal Obaid. I am the Director of Operations with the Lawrence Douglas County Housing Authority. I'm going to share my screen and just one moment. So we are requesting for $50,000 from AHAB for our New Horizon Transitional Housing Program. It is a program that will provide a significant opportunity for permanent housing assistance to families experiencing homelessness and are guests of the Lawrence Community Shelter. The route to permanent housing assistance starts with this program, and it offers 24 months of rental assistance. The $50,000 would cover about 3 households, which is on average 12 to 15 individuals. And this is in addition to case management via one of LDCHA's community partnerships. So families are required to receive case management during the 24-month program, giving them the support they may need to successfully transition to a permanent Section 8 voucher. So LDCHA works closely with the Lawrence Community Shelter to make offers to guests of the shelter. And with the funds from AHAB, the $50,000 that we are requesting, in addition to the $100,000 grant that we have received from Douglas County, we are hoping by May of 2021 to offer 6 New Horizon vouchers to families that are residing at the Monarch Villages. In addition to that, we would be able to offer an additional 4 families in 2021 who would also be guests of the Lawrence Community Shelter. So as United Way, Leah has kind of went over, homelessness directly affects community resources such as education, social services, public safety, mental health, and again, particular to healthcare in regards to the current COVID-19 pandemic. These funds would help reduce the cost of the homelessness to the community. And again, families experiencing homelessness are not only facing the negative impacts of housing instability during the experience itself, but are often seeing a lasting impact that can stretch through multiple generations. The program started in 2016 and since then has served 24 families, 90 individuals, 60 of which are children. Currently, we have 9 active families. 6 of those families are fully funded through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund from previous grants. And currently, the average of housing assistance for families for 24 months is $15,000 to $18,000. And we are seeing an 80% success rate within this program, meaning that 80% of these families are successfully transitioning to permanent housing assistance through a Section 8 voucher. I think it's important to also recognize that 96% of our families that have been served have an AMI of 0 to 30%, one having 30 to 50%. So I've attached some data that's that came from the so I've attached some data that kind of looks at the national numbers in terms of race and homelessness, specifically to families with children. And I've kind of on the other side indicated some information about New Horizon in 2020 and the numbers we have served since the program has started. So according to the HMIS data, about 3/4 of people and families with children experiencing sheltered homelessness in 2016 was about 78.3%. And these are people that are identified as non-white or white and Hispanic. New Horizons program has served 62% of families that identify as non-white or white and Hispanic. Just over half of people and families with children who used shelter in 2016 identified as African American or Black. So that's 51.7%. The New Horizons program has served 29% of families that identified as African American or Black. More than 1 in 4 people experiencing homelessness in families with children identified as Hispanic or Latino. It's 27% on the national. We have served 8% that have identified as Hispanic or Latino. 1 out of 40%, so about 2.5% of people in families experiencing homelessness identified as Native American, and people who identify as Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders comprise 2% of the general, 0.2% of the general population, and 2.3% of all people in families who experience homelessness. And we have 33% that identify as multiracial or mixed. 38% of our participants for this program have been white. All families that are served through the New Horizon program will see their conditions improved through more stable housing and support services. This program does not target a specific geographic area, and so it allows families to utilize their voucher anywhere in Douglas County. It does target some of our most vulnerable families in the county and offers them access to housing and services. While this program does seek funds year after year to kind of continue its services, it's important to recognize that the funds are being utilized to stably house new families that are experiencing homelessness. And so we have not had any duplication in the families that have received the services. And again, I think to remember that 80% of our households have been successful in transitioning to that permanent voucher. And that will be it on my end. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take those right now.
Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. Are there questions from board members?
Christina Gentry, citizen at large. I love the fact that you use identifying markers and appreciate you giving us information about demographics that you have successfully helped to become home secure. I'm wondering though too about the 20%. I know you mentioned twice 80% of your New Horizons folks have successfully completed this opportunity. I'm wondering about that 20% though, and this is one long-winded question, but how long will continued support go to funding those who don't use their Section 8 vouchers in Douglas County? I know that we experience what we were talking about earlier in this meeting about Section 8 voucher biases in our community. So how long would the continued support go to those who are seeing themselves holding on to their vouchers for 60 days, 90 days or more? And is that the 20% that are unsuccessful in your program?
I just want to clarify. So if the question is in specific to why are these people, the 20% not successful, or is it, are they not successful because they don't have access to finding housing that is Section 8 eligible?
Right. So you may not be able, this is Christina Gentry, citizen at large. Galal, you may not be able to answer that 20% question. I'm just curious about how long the continued support goes to fund those who are holding a Section 8 voucher in their hands and can't use it in Douglas County. So maybe the 20% it is a reflection of that, maybe not, but maybe you have that information.
So it is not a reflection of that. So the 20% would be families, and it was a total of 3 families to date that have not successfully completed the program. So these are families that will go through the 24-month process with the support services and just might not meet the goal of the program in terms of having building good rental history, and it might be due to damaging units, or it could be something that's more associated with criminal. I don't have the specifics for those 3 households, but I can share that information as to what caused those 3 families to kind of not transition to a permanent voucher. In terms of lease up and utilization of the vouchers, the Housing Authority has, when we offer a voucher, it does have a deadline of within 60 days, it needs to be utilized with extensions available. And the reason for the extensions is because sometimes it can be difficult to find housing that is Section 8, that allows for Section 8. It also can just be a multitude of other reasons that can kind of cause someone to not find housing right away. But we do offer those extensions, and we work actively with those families, both on the supportive end service, so with their case manager. And then when we do have an AmeriCorps present, we always have somebody that works directly with these families to help them find housing. So the Housing Authority, with their as their AmeriCorps member 4 years ago, I started the housing availability list, and that has helped increase the lease up rates for Section 8 tenants. And I know that that process, or that building of a list of available housing has expanded, because we've seen it as something that's worked in the community. And so we've seen United Way kind of grab onto that with the housing advocate, keeping that list up to date as well. So we do actively work to make sure that the vouchers are utilized in a timely manner.
Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. I have a couple of questions also. I see under your project revenue information that in addition to the Housing Trust Fund contribution of $50,000, you have confirmed funds from Douglas County in the amount of $100,000 for a total budget of $150,000. What was the size of the contribution from Douglas County last year?
Last year, we did receive also $100,000 from the Douglas County.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question. Of the $150,000 budget, are all of these funds used for direct housing support, or are a portion of these funds used for other services?
100% of the funds are used directly for rental assistance. There's no admin fee either on our end or on LCS as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next applicant is the Lawrence Community Shelter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Renee Kuhl. I'm the Executive Director of the Lawrence Community Shelter. I'm here today with a request for $50,000 from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to support rapid rehousing for individuals who are going to be sheltered in a hotel shelter this winter. Lawrence Community Shelter has been working closely with city staff to extend a hotel shelter effort that we have maintained since October with CARES funding. Through the city staff's efforts, we've been able to secure ESG funding that will allow us to shelter, we're hoping, 100 households through the end of March in a hotel. It's really important that we establish permanent housing pathways for individuals who are sheltered through this effort. Across the community, we have made an extensive effort to meet the increased demand for shelter beds in the community. LCS has had to reduce our capacity because of the need to social distance, but we've offered this hotel shelter, which will offer 49 hotel rooms to individuals experiencing homelessness. We have the Woody Park effort, which is 20 tents for people experiencing homelessness. Family Promise is offering, I think it's 8 units of temporary shelter for families. And so across these projects, these sheltering efforts, we're offering at least 160 shelter beds this winter to people experiencing homelessness, which I think is likely a historic high in terms of the shelter capacity in the community. However, increased shelter capacity in a community does not in and of itself lead to a reduction in homelessness. It must be tied to permanent housing pathways. It's really important that we understand shelter as a bridge to housing, and understand that when we engage in temporary shelter efforts, if we don't articulate very clearly for those participants how they will exit to housing, it will not necessarily end their homelessness, and it will not do it in a timely fashion. So our goal as a community should be to ensure that stints of homelessness, whether they're unsheltered or they're in an emergency shelter, are rare, very brief, and one time. And when I say brief, I mean 90 days. And that is what this hotel sheltering effort will be this winter. It's 90 days of emergency shelter from January to March. And we have a goal through this ESG funding to exit 75% of the households served through this effort to permanent housing. We've requested a significant amount of rapid rehousing through 2 rounds of ESG federal funding. However, we don't know that we will receive those funds. And so that's why I've come to AHAB to ask for your support, ensuring that we at least have some funds for exiting people directly from the hotel shelter to permanent housing. LCS has a CDBG funded stabilization manager already in place. The ESG funding for the winter shelter will allow us to employ 3 temporary housing navigators. They will meet with each participant of the program, help them plot out a housing plan so that they're exited to the right housing opportunity for them that will help them stabilize. And then we have a stabilization manager who can provide follow-up wraparound case management support. All I'm asking for funding for is directly for the rental assistance. And I want to explain a little bit about rapid rehousing, because we've talked a lot about different models of rental assistance and housing stabilization today. And I want to articulate directly what rapid rehousing is. It's an evidence-based best practice for ensuring that families who are experiencing homelessness for the first time are quickly exited from homelessness and remain stable and do not become homeless again. It's proffered according to a principle of the least amount of assistance necessary to achieve that goal. So it's very flexible. It's more flexible in terms of the case management model than your typical voucher program. As a family or individual acquires or increases their income, the amount of the monthly subsidy can be lowered, so the length of assistance can be extended. So that way you can start out funding someone at 100% of their rental costs for 6 months, but if they get a job or they get SSI or SSDI, you can decrease the amount of assistance and then support them for longer, up to, as a best practice, 24 months. However, for this program, we're only planning to provide support for up to 12 months because that's the length of the ESG grant year. And of course, that's the length of your grant year. And we don't know how much longer we'll be able to, what level of support we'll have in 2022 for people. So that's our plan for exiting folks from the hotel shelter. This is just a really crucial intervention for people who are experiencing homelessness for the first time. I think we've had some proposals today for funding for models that are really great, crucial interventions for people who have a history of chronic homelessness and who also are experiencing or disabled by substance use disorder or mental health issue. And this assistance can also serve those populations by bridging them to Section 8 or other forms of permanent supportive housing. So things like SSI, SSDI, Section 8 can take a year or more to materialize. In our community, we don't have a lot of HUD-funded permanent supportive housing. So those, you can sit on our by name list for 12 months or longer waiting for a permanent supportive housing spot. And rapid rehousing can get those people out of the shelter or out of an unsheltered environment and into housing quickly. And then you can be in your own permanent housing while you await a different program spot. However, in this case, I'm really focused on moving people out of this hotel shelter. It's the ESG funding for this program that's temporary is $250,000. That's a huge investment in homeless services from Kansas Housing Resource Corporation into our community. And we need to leverage that investment and make sure that it yields the outcome of ending homelessness. We don't want to see people who become homeless for the first time because of this pandemic remain homeless for too long or become homeless again because no one planned for where they were going to go from the hotel shelter. So I just want to keep it short. We've talked a ton about homelessness today. We've looked at a lot of different models. But for this proposal from LCS, it's really focused on looking at this one-time event that we're experiencing with the hotel shelter as a response to COVID-19.
Thank you, Renee. Questions from the advisory board for Renee? Renee, I have a question. Ron Gacious, AHAB Chair. The project revenue information sheet shows a contribution for your project, shows a contribution of $50,000 from the Housing Trust Fund and an additional $300,000 from other. What is the source of those other funds?
That would be ESG funding. And I'm sorry, I didn't articulate that in the project budget. I've requested $320,000 from, it also should say $320,000. At the time I submitted, I wasn't entirely sure how much I would be requesting from the second round of ESG. So I've requested $320,000 across 2 rounds of ESG for rapid rehousing funds. The bulk of that other requests will be direct housing assistance as well, with a small percentage for an additional case manager. However, if I don't receive that funding, I'll use the case manager that I already employ to provide the wraparound support.
And when did you expect the decision on this ESG funding? Is that coming later this month?
It might be January, and Danielle Walters would know a ton about that. We're both just waiting. We're all sitting on our hands and waiting to see when we will get that information. Hopefully by mid-January, I would think at the latest.
Thank you. Other questions for Renee?
Yes, this is Edith Guffey, member at large. And if the worst case scenario, say you don't get any ESG funding, what impact is $50,000 going to make?
That's a really great question. We have some funding already promised from Burt Nash for rapid rehousing. It's possible that other, and I think Burt Nash has also requested some additional funding, that will move through the coordinated entry process. So we'll still have access by enrolling all of our participants into coordinated entry to other rapid rehousing funds that are available from ESG. These are just the funds that I've requested. However, I just don't know, I can't say. Let's say, however, very worst case scenario, it is truly only the $50,000 that AHAB awards. I would likely go to the community and request, run a fundraiser for an additional $50,000 to match your contribution. That would give us $100,000. I'm pretty confident that I could do that, and confident that like our community would want to support exiting people to housing rather than exiting them to the street. And we would just still offer assistance, but maybe make the goal of just offering as many people a security deposit and first month's rent as possible. That's on average $1,500 for families that we serve. So it's just still important to offer everyone at least a security deposit and first month's rent if you want to exit people to permanent housing. It's just really difficult for these families, especially in a pandemic, to save that amount of money in 90 days. It would be difficult for me to save $1,500 in 90 days. So it's really crucial that we understand that if we want the length of stay in shelter or in unsheltered environments to be short, we have to give people the money when they exit. It's just not super feasible for folks experiencing homelessness to sock that amount of money away in a short time.
Thank you, Renee.
You're
Other
welcome.
questions for Renee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Okay, 1:35. Thank you all for your attention to all of our, yes, Monty, did you have a question, comment? Can't hear you, Monty.
I need to leave. I had not thought this was going to take 2.5 hours, and I scheduled something at 1:30, which I'm 10 minutes late to. So I don't know how that impacts our meeting here.
I don't think that we have any decisions to make, the balance of this agenda. So Diane, do we have any problems if Monty leaves?
Diane Stoddard, Assistant City Manager. No, that wouldn't be a problem. And I think you're nearing the end of the agenda here.
Yes, ma'am. All right, Monty, thank you very much. Under other new business, I do have one item that I would ask board members to consider. Once again, we have a LIHTC project on our list that has a timeline that doesn't really necessarily fit with our timeline. You know, these guys are looking for a commitment by May, don't need money in hand until December. Meanwhile, we have quite a few other applicants in front of us who are requesting funds that they would put to work in the community much sooner than December of 2021. So I've been asking myself, how do we maximize the number of dollars that we can put into of trust fund dollars that we can put into the community and get them to work as quickly as possible, rather than have the fund build for an additional 12 months. And then we're back December, January of next year, making the decisions like we're making right now. And I haven't thought through whether it really makes sense or not, but I'd like us to think amongst ourselves the possibility of maybe doing a semi-annual award calendar for 2021. The awards that we're making now, those decisions will be made in January. By July of 2021, we will have another 600,000 or more of trust fund dollars available that could be allocated into the community, rather than waiting until December or January of next year. There are, I'm sure, good arguments against doing this. I could probably make some of them myself. I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do or not, but I'd like us to think about how do we maximize use of the dollars in our trust fund, in our community. Does it make sense in the environment that we're in right now to have just a 12-month cycle, or does it make sense to consider doing something that puts funds to use more quickly. As it happens, this past year, we a couple of different times broke from our regular annual cycle. And I think in both cases, we made some pretty good decisions. It might be that adaptability and flexibility ends up being one of our strengths, or at least an advantage. Anyway, that just food for thought. I don't know if that stimulates any ideas or comments from anyone or not. You don't have to share them with me now if you don't want to, but just something that I thought I would raise as a possibility that we might want to consider as we go about our decision-making next month. Any other questions or comments from anyone under the category of other new business?
This is Christina Gentry, and I kind of wanted to weigh in. I'm sorry, Christina Gentry, citizen at large. I would want to weigh in on what you just said. I think I hear someone talking at the same time. Am I talking over someone? Okay.
No, it sounded like just a background conversation. Christina, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Christina Gentry, citizen at large. I absolutely would support that. And I know we're not making decisions, but I do want to just point out that the federal ban on evictions expires in January. So with that happening, the percentage of rents or renters or people and tenants that expect to meet or have evictions will be an historic amount of numbers that we will be looking at in 2021. So yes, we have an overwhelming amount of people who will be looking at facing evictions in January. And that's just 2 weeks away, maybe a little bit more than that. So absolutely, this is just a way in and a support of that comment that you made, Ron Gages.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, final thoughts for the group? Hearing none, I would remind you that our next meeting will be on January 11th. Also at that time, we will be electing the board chair and vice chair and considering our funding recommendations for this notice of funding availability. Following meetings are February 8th and March 8th. No other items coming before the advisory board. I declare our meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.